Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, well, aging. James Allen wrote, "You are today where your thoughts have brought you. You will be tomorrow where your thoughts take you." George Bernard Shaw wrote, "Life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself." In this episode, we discuss embracing the suck and taking responsibility for your aging.
So, Dr. Armstrong, as you know, I'm getting married this fall, and I'm trying to get back into the swing of exercising and getting back into shape and getting back to my goal weight of where I was prior to COVID and the world shutting down. And as I'm going through this process, I'm realizing that, man, I really got out of shape. And I don't have anyone to blame but myself. And I started thinking about it. There's a lot of people throughout my life that I know where they like to point the finger at, oh, I can't do something because of this factor. And I can't do something because of this factor. And this has happened to me because of this individual. They placed me here. And at some point, one needs to wake up, look in the mirror and say, you know what? I'm going to take full responsibility of this. I put myself in this predicament. I put myself there and I can get myself out. So I thought that would be a really cool topic to discuss, taking responsibility for aging. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great topic. And I would say rather than taking responsibility for the hole you dug yourself into, take responsibility for not digging that hole in the first place.
Exactly.
Let me start. A lot of people know that I love Orison Swett MardenIn's quotes. He is the founder of Success Magazine. He goes way back. Really is kind of one of those original motivational writers, speakers. Quote, kind of relative to this topic is your outlook upon life, your estimate of yourself, your estimate of your value are largely colored by your environment. Your whole career will be modified, shaped, molded by your surroundings, by the character of the people with whom you come in contact every day. And I think that is a really good underlying theme for taking responsibility for your aging. You know, create the environment that you need to be successful aging. And there's a lot of things that we can talk about in regards to that. I think one of the things that really causes me to jump to, and we've had him as a guest on the podcast, and I've mentioned him several times, is Jim Harshaw Jr., and he has his concept of the environment of excellence, that the environment that you put yourself in is going to determine to an extent the level of excellence or success that you have in whatever endeavor you're dealing with. And so when you look at aging, what environment are you putting yourself into in which you're aging either successfully or unsuccessfully?
So it's kind of like that old saying, show me your friends and I'll show you what type of person you are. I'll show you where you're going to be. Meaning if you have a bunch of friends that just like to go out and party, then you're guilty by association. But if you have a lot of friends that are driven and they have goals and they push each other and they challenge each other, well, you're going to fall in suit with those friends that you hang out with. Correct.
Yeah. Now, you can have those friends that like to go out and party, but just realize you're going to age better than them if you don't go out and party with them.
Right.
Yeah, and I would say to age well, it's not necessarily removing yourself from other people, because we could be an influence on those people. And I think it's important that we are an influence on those people. But we can influence them by not following their path and taking a path of leadership that's going to show this is how you age well.
So how do you change that mindset if you're waking up one day and you're like, oh my goodness, I gotta change. Something has to change in my life. And I know it needs to change, but I just don't know. I just don't know how. I don't know where to go. How do you get someone to get that ball rolling in order to get that momentum going?
Dr. Marvin, Dr. Leo Marvin, Dr. Marvin. Remember,
Baby steps.
What about step? Yeah. What about Bob? Baby steps.
Baby steps.
You know, just what can I do in this moment that will change my next behavior? I'd say often, be your best today, be better tomorrow. Carpe memento. If I choose to live differently in this moment, it's going to change whatever comes next. I can't change what I did yesterday. So if I screwed up yesterday, if you are a heavy drinker and you wake up with a horrible hangover and you say, oh, I'm never going to drink again. How many people have done that in their life where they wake up on a Sunday morning after drinking all night Saturday and saying, and actually it's probably more like waking up on a Sunday afternoon after drinking heavily the night before and saying, oh, I'm never going to drink again. And then first thing I have for breakfast is Cheerios with beer on top of it because that'll help the hangover, right? Yeah. If you wake up and you're dissatisfied with your circumstances, what can you do in that moment to make a change that will make it different?
It's just realizing that you want it and you have to want it.
Yeah.
And you have to make that change.
And it's small changes.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, we can't just change our entire life in one moment. It's going to be a series of moments building toward that more successful aging. And so where do you want to start? What can you start today that is going to make you successful? And so pick an area of life and what are you going to do differently? You've mentioned several times about your changes in your finances and just starting to put away money and making part of your savings part of your monthly bills.
Mm-hmm.
That's one change, and it might not be having to invest 10%. That could be a big chunk for a lot of people, especially if you have really poor financial skills to begin with. But maybe just 1% to start. I'm going to start this month. I'm going to put away 1% of every paycheck into a checking account. That's not a lot of money, depending on how much you're making, but it accrues. Interest is going to grow. And so then you get used to 1%, now 2%, then 3%, baby steps. And, to do that, what do I have to give up? We talk about opportunity costs a lot. If I have a pool of money that I make every month, it's going to go into something. And if I'm ending up at zero balance at the end of the month, then I'm spending everything that I'm making. Now, unfortunately, most Americans are ending up in negative balance. So the first thing that you have to do is get yourself to that zero balance. And so if you're spending too much to where you're living off your credit cards, you got to start cutting what you're spending and you got to start paying down those credit cards. And then once you get out of debt, now you can start looking at savings. And, as you get closer to that zero balance, I would say, a little bit has to go into savings as you are paying off your financial bills. You might be a little off kilter in there, but if you're getting in the habit of putting a little bit away, but paying more off on your bills, eventually those bills go down and your savings account goes up.
I actually saw this firsthand. My old roommate used to be a banker, and it was pretty cool. He had a friend, and she was really, really struggling with her financial issues, and she was living off her credit card. And she came to him, and she's like, "Can you please help me? And she was super emotional. And he goes, "Yeah, let me see your credit cards really quick. Let me see all of them." And she pulls out her wallet. She hands him the credit cards. And he's like, "Awesome." And he goes into her kitchen and he takes little cups and he fills each cup with water and he drops each credit card into one of the cups. And then he takes all those cups and he puts it in her freezer. And he said, "I've literally just frozen your credit cards. You will not touch these ever again." And they just remained in her freezer frozen. And it seems kind of funny because you're like, wow, you literally took a metaphor of freezing an account and you physically did it. And just seeing it go into the freezer changed her mindset altogether. She completely pulled herself out of debt and she changed her life around. She ended up getting a savings account. I also think it's really cool that in the world we live in, technology is awesome. We have access to everything. And if you are struggling financially, there's a lot of banks out there right now that are offering like savings account where it's not the normal savings account. It's like they'll add another 3 to 4% on up until your first like $3,000. And I just found that out just by doing research. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think David Ramsey's another good program.
Yes.
That somebody should really consider doing if they are in financial peril.
Yeah. Well, I would agree. I think a lot of the financial gurus out there, they tell you the importance of using your credit card and how you got to build credit. You got to do this and got to do that. But with Dave Ramsey, he kind of teaches you the opposite. He says, yeah, it's important to have credit, but it's even more important to be debt free and not owe anyone anything. Don't continuously pay for something that you yourself don't own. And
if you do the mathematics too, if you look at delayed gratification, it saves you a tremendous amount of money, because a lot of people, rather than saving for a new television, just putting away a certain amount of money every month, how much you would pay in, say, your credit card payments on that, even if you got like 0% interest on it, you just put that away, save it first. Now you're accruing interest in that savings account as you save for it. So you're actually making money, and then you buy it, with cash, rather than buying it immediately on a credit card and paying interest on that credit card.
Right.
Now I do use my credit card for almost everything. I don't carry a lot of cash, and I struggle with that because I know that costs businesses money, but it's also very easy, rather than having to constantly go to the bank, get cash, and do all that kind of stuff, and carry a big wad of cash around with me. But I pay off every bill every month.
Mm-hmm.
We have limited stuff that we might, like large expenses, like putting a roof on the house. We have done that in 0% financing cases, so it's always never paying interest on it. And you should never pay interest on anything. And that's how you kind of help to improve your finances. Now, cars could be a little bit different situation. It's almost impossible to buy a car anymore literally right now, following David Ramsey's principles of kind of saving and buying a used car, and then, being able to save money that way, you take a huge hit right now, the way the car industry is. And so that becomes a bit more challenging. But the idea is that if you have to buy something like a car with interest, keep it much longer, and not just as soon as it's paid off, go and buy another car. What else can we improve to age well?
Well, I think we talk a lot about exercise and nutrition, and so we don't want to beat a dead horse. But at the same time, that's a subject that we do know. And a lot of people, they need to take those first baby steps in order to move in that direction, to add more longevity to their life and to age well. So we won't go into too much detail. But
I don't think that's a dead horse. I mean, I do think it's a important topic, and in many regards, I think it's a very central topic to successful aging, because your finances cannot be in order if you are not in good health, and your health cannot be in good order if you're not physically capable. And if you can't do things, you can't work, you can't have enjoyment in life per se. You're going to have more of your money going into medical expenses. And so getting your physical activity and your exercise right is, I think, foundational to successful aging. And so what do you do now to improve that? To take charge and take responsibility for your physical activity and your exercise.
Well, I think you said it right there, is take responsibility. I know there's probably going to be a listener that's listening to this right now, and they're like, well, easy for you guys to say. I have whatever situation going on in my life, and it hinders me from exercising or working out. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, every situation is different, and it is not easy. And, if life were easy, I don't know what you say for that. Life just isn't easy. There's no alternative to it. There's going to be challenges, and certainly there are challenges to being able to exercise. There's time, there's facilities, there's the opportunity, there's having kids, there's, everybody can come up with an excuse. And I believe one of the podcasts we did recently, we addressed some of the excuses. And again, time being the biggest factor. But if we're going to go back to that opportunity cost model, how are you using your time? What can you cut in your time to give you some exercise time? And it may only be 15 minutes at a time. Maybe you cut 15 minutes of TV entertainment and go do some exercise, whether it's walk the dogs. If you can't go outside because it's unsafe or the weather's bad or whatever it might be, what can you do within your apartment to get moving? You got to run in place for 15 minutes. It's boring and it might look a little bit silly. So close the blinds so your neighbors can't see you. But, you can do that in front of the TV. You can do a series of different body weight type exercises and do kind of that air quote Tabata kind of workout. There's not an excuse not to be doing some kind of physical activity. Now, there are rare individuals out there who, because of physical and or cognitive disabilities, cannot do, quite the level of physical activity. But I would say for those individuals, their caretakers owe it to them to give them at least a perception of physical activity. Take them out. If somebody is confined to a wheelchair, they're quadriplegic, they cannot function on their own other than with a caretaker. Getting them outside, getting them in the air, and getting their body moving through space is going to have some level of benefit for them, and it's going to improve their quality of life.
I discussed my epigenetics test with TruDiagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging.
Yeah, I think, yep. You make it seem so simple, but it's like, well, duh.
Well, it is duh.
It's like,
we don't want to accept the duh. We want to think that exercise is going to be hard. It's difficult. And it is hard. And I tell my students, I don't like exercise.
I know.
I'm an exercise physiologist. I teach exercise science, and I hate exercising. But it's because it is necessary and it is good that I hate it. If it was something easy, then it's not going to be something I'm going to hate. And so I always say that exercise is like taking, the guy takes a 2x4 and smacks himself in the forehead. And you say, why do you do that? Because it feels so good when I stop. And that's what exercise is. If I can contribute that half hour, hour and a half, 2 hours a day doing some level of exercise or physical activity, then the rest of my day is going to be much better. And it's going to be more productive. And I'm going to get more out of that day because I spent that time doing what sucks.
Doing what sucks.
Yeah, you got to do what sucks.
I think that should be the name of this pod. Do what sucks.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? Because no one wants to take responsibility. No one wants to wake up in the morning and go to their job and spend 8 hours there, unless it's a really cool job. No one wants to wake up and go to the gym. Everyone just wants to be fit, but you have to do what sucks in order to achieve greatness or achieve success. You can't spell success without suck.
Oh, there you go. Maybe we should change the title of this episode from "Take Responsibility for Your Aging" to "Do What Sucks."
Yeah.
Hey, that's what it'll be. Do what sucks to age well. But even look at like diet. If you're going to eat healthy, everybody will say, "Well, it's so expensive to eat healthy." It's not that expensive to eat healthy. You can eat simply and make good choices, but it might take a little bit of time in prep. It might take a little bit more time in shopping. But if you do your shopping wisely, buy more healthier, cheaper stock food in bulk and prepare in larger quantities so that you have servings to divvy out throughout the week, then you're going to save some money. And it might not be the most exciting meals, but it's healthy.
Pro tip to eat healthy. Don't go down the aisles. Stay on the outside. Just stay on the outside parameter of the grocery store. What's on the outside? You got your vegetables, you got your fruits, and you got your meat. Stay on the outside. You're totally fine. If you go down the aisle, that's where all the preservatives are. That's where all the junk food is. You're going to be tempted to buy those chips. You're going to be tempted to buy those cereal. You're going to be super tempted. Just stay on the outside. Get your eggs, get your meat, get your fish, get your vegetables. Stay on the outside.
What about legumes? Remember, we talked in one of the recent podcasts about the importance of legumes for aging. Those are in the middle aisles. Your dried beans.
Go to the section where there's spices and legumes.
Yeah.
There you go.
Just walk through the grocery store wisely. I mean, there are things in the center aisles that we might need. I mean, canned goods that, maybe because the fresh vegetables may go bad depending on our lifestyle and things like that. Canned aren't that bad, and they can be a little bit cheaper. You have frozen vegetables. Those are in center aisles. Just avoid the aisles that are the most tempting to you, and avoid, just, again, take responsibility. Don't blame the grocery store for its layout because you buy shitty food. Blame yourself for what you put in your grocery cart. Look at what you're putting in the cart, evaluate it. Again, it's opportunity cost. You have a cart to fill. What are you going to fill it with? You're going to fill it with healthy, wise foods that are going to help you to maintain a healthy body weight, lower your blood pressure, help you to live well, sleep well, and do all those types of things? Or are you going to buy the highly processed, cheap, crappy food that is not good for you?
Right.
And if you're going to buy what we might label as junk food, buy good quality junk food. Stuff that's going to make it worth it. I just think of like any kind of dessert. It's okay to have dessert, but you don't have to buy crappy, insert common brand boxed desserts. In this case, the bakery aisle is on the outer perimeter of the grocery store. I went and stopped at the grocery store the other day, and I noticed they have a little section where they have a bunch of like individual servings of cake. And I was actually somewhat tempted. They had a little slice of carrot cake. And it looked kind of good, but it was like, I really don't want or need dessert. But, if I want a dessert,
make it count.
Yeah, well, make it count. But also, don't buy the whole pie. Buy a slice of it if you can. Or, go out somewhere. Go to a restaurant or establishment that is really known for their pie. Have one slice and then walk out of the store. Simple as that.
I feel like going out, though, it kind of contradicts the financial aspect.
Obviously.
But again, if you're planning accordingly, you also have the right to treat yourself every now and then.
Absolutely. And, treat yourself. But again, if you buy a slice of the pie, that per serving might be a little bit more expensive than if you bought, a giant, pie or, I don't know, do they sell like multiple pies for a set price at Costco or Sam's Club? But, you buy these dessert packages in bulk. It's cheaper to buy, I'm going to go to the bakery and I'm going to, the larger cake is a little bit cheaper. I'm going to buy that and take it home. Now you eat the whole dang thing and you're going to get, more unhealthy from eating all of it rather than, can you just get a slice of that somewhere? So
speaking of pie, we just passed March 14th. Did you get your pie on Pie Day?
No, I did not.
No. I didn't either. This first time this year. I did, however, get a slice of pizza, which
it's a pizza pie. Yeah, so didn't even do that.
So you did mention one of the things as far as nutrition, how it affects our sleep. And I do think that sleep is also a huge factor as far as aging well. And I don't think enough people prioritize sleep or take responsibility for it. I think you are a wonderful example of setting your bedtime, and you say your family makes fun of you, but at the same time, you're taking full on responsibility and it's pretty inspiring. I've actually started following those same footsteps, and I think a set bedtime, it just becomes a part of your routine. And then, let's say you have one crazy night where you get woke up in the middle of the night. Well, because you're on this set routine and you're accumulating, X amount of hours into your sleep, if your sleep habit gets thrown off for one day, it doesn't affect you as often as not having a bedtime and having minimal sleep. I don't know. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think if you have a sleep time or bedtime, it's going to help to, and it's not only a bedtime, but also a consistent rise time in the morning.
Right.
That you are going to have your circadian rhythms get a little bit more in sync with that, and you're going to have better sleep, you're going to have better hormonal levels. You're going to just function better in your day if you do that. And, if you plan for your sleep and your rise time, you're also better able to plan for your daily activities as well. And so, how much I can get done in the day is going to be dictated by how well I sleep. I think another aspect of taking responsibility for our aging is to take responsibility for our response to circumstances in our lives. As Forrest Gump said, it happens. And as things happen in our lives, I like to believe that everything that happens for some greater good. It might be crap for me, but how I respond to that is going to have an impact on somebody somewhere, and it tends to, have that bit of a rippling effect. We are all so interconnected. I tend to think of my spiritual well-centeredness and my faith being based a little bit on quantum physics. I have that kind of quantum physics Jesus in my life, that we're all so interconnected that we have to understand that things happen for greater purposes. And I like to put a big P, capital P on purpose. And with that, it kind of leads me to what I call gratitude with two T's, gratitude plus attitude. And having an attitude of gratitude is one way that we can take responsibility for our successful aging, is just looking at the circumstances we are in, what good is coming out of this, and be grateful for it and find the good in it.
So basically, don't be stressed.
I mean, you're going to be stressed, and,
but don't let the stress consume you.
Right. Or don't let the stress harm you. Stress, we tend to think of stress as a bad word, but stress, there's positive stress, there's good stress and there's bad stress. And how we respond to any stress is somewhat of a matter of choice. So how we choose to receive this stressful situation is going to have an impact on how we age well.
Mm.
And so if something happens, well, what am I to learn from this? Or how is this helping me to grow? Remember, we've talked repeatedly about applying the principle of overload to all aspects of life. And so without stress in our lives, there's no growth.
It's not a mistake. It's a learning opportunity.
Right. I mean, and there's a saying in wrestling that there's no winners and losers in wrestling, that there's only winners and learners. And so those losses, what we tend to think of as a negative, or the failures that we see in life, are the things that help us to grow.
Right.
That reveal to us areas of weakness, reveal to us the areas that we need to grow and to change. And so there's nothing wrong with failing. And honestly, and maybe that's the next topic to talk about in taking responsibility for your aging, is age to fail.
Whew.
That you want to be failing. If you're not failing, you're not
learning,
challenging yourself. You're kind of not living outside of the constraints that you put on yourself. And as long as you're failing forward, you're growing.
Well, I think it also comes down to taking responsibility of your own mindset, right? So, for example, if you go into work and you have an individual that you work with, and man, your personality just clashes with their personality, right? And this person ends up giving you a hard time. Well, you got two ways to handle that situation. you can either A, revert back to your old elementary school self where you're like, this person's just a bully and they're just picking on me and I can't get a break and they make me uncomfortable. Or you can have that growth mindset where you're like, wow, this is an opportunity to overcome this challenge. This person, although our personalities are clashing and although they're very, very difficult to work with, what a great opportunity for me to change my lingo a little bit in order to have that connection with them. What a great opportunity it is for me to not lose my cool or not lose my temper or not be fazed by this, because it's one step closer to moving up the chain where I'm going to have not just that personality to deal with, but several other personalities that could be very similar to that. So you're taking each opportunity that's a challenge and you're like, I need to figure out a way to change myself in order to overcome this challenge, to set myself up for success later. And although it sucks, I'm just going to grab the bull by the horns and make it happen.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned there are two choices. I think there's three choices in there, and you commonly hear like the third way. We have that we can be the victim, we can be the aggressor, or we can find that third path to handle the situation a little bit more effectively. And years ago, I heard Rob Bell speak, and he talked about the verses in the Bible where Jesus talks about, turning the other cheek and those types of things. And we tend to think of those as, just kind of taking abuse. But the reality is the way that whole kind of sermon of parables was presented was really taking a third way. Like when it talks about, walking the extra mile. Back then, the Roman soldiers could compel you to carry their pack for 1 mile, but only 1 mile. And so beyond the mile, you had to return it to them or, they could get in trouble. And so when you walk the extra mile, now you can envision this Roman soldier, hey, well, come on, give it back to me. Give it back to me. No, I'm fine. I'm going to keep walking. And now you have put them in a position where they're not being harmed, but, you're really kind of putting them in their place. Or, when you turn the other cheek, it's actually having to do with the way that a Jewish person back then would, if you slap with the back of your hand, it's okay. But if you turn the other cheek, now you're forcing them to slap with the front of the hand, which I guess culturally was something that was a huge negative. And so when we look at the circumstances that we're in, if somebody is putting us in a bad situation, how can we turn it against them without it being this aggressive negative, where we're taking a positive that puts them in the now awkward situation, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, that actually kind of reminds me of, I'm sure you've heard of David Goggins.
Mm-hmm. You bring him up a lot.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite people in the entire world. He's so inspirational.
I don't find him that inspirational.
That's okay. You don't have to. That's a different of opinions. But when he first started with the Navy and they were going through Hell Week, his drill instructors, they were making everyone just kind of suffer. And he turns to his crew and he's like, boys, we're gonna make them regret this. And they're like, what are you talking about? He goes, when they look at us, we're gonna throw this boat up in the air. We're gonna be yelling, we're gonna be screaming as if it has no effect on us whatsoever. And they did that. And not only did it pump his crew up, but the people that were kind of making his life hell, they were like, oh, crap, dude, I remember that. I remember going through that, and they're unfazed by that. And then that positiveness just kind of spread throughout his whole, I don't know, platoon or whatever you want to call it. And I don't know, it's really cool. Just taking a negative situation and just being like, whoa, I love this. I love this challenge. Let's make it happen. You can't hurt me. You can't. I'm unfazed by this. Bring it on. What's next? It's just, it's a completely different mindset. And
I think anytime you're put into those situations, if you just take the mindset of gratitude, just hey, this is a great opportunity. I'm just going to have fun with this. Yeah, it's hard, but I'm going to do more. And it takes that away from you. I mean, it takes it away from the person who is trying to kind of put you down or make your life difficult. You have completely stripped them of any control over you, and have fun with it.
Right.
It, it's a great way of being kind of replacing our normal aggressive responses to people. I have much more fun doing that kind of stuff.
Where's the balance, though, do you think, if you don't want someone taking advantage of you and you don't want someone bullying you to a point where it's like, wow, they have a positive attitude no matter what. I'm just going to keep doing horrible things and I'm just going to keep throwing things their way because I know they can take it. And I'm just going to sit back and relax. Where's that balance of where you draw that line in the sand and say, I'll overcome any challenge, but this right here, this isn't an obstacle that you're putting in front of me. This right here is a line. And if you cross this line, then you're going to have a challenge. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it makes perfect sense. But I mean, you have to be wise with all this stuff. I mean, you don't, again, that attitude of turn the other cheek. If you're being abused in a relationship, you don't keep letting them just abuse you and say, oh, it's fine. Just keep hitting me because I'm the bigger person, because I'm letting you hit me. That's not wise. That's get the hell out of that situation. Right. And that's not where that is to be applied. And people have misapplied that in the past, where they'll take a beating from somebody because they think that they're supposed to turn the other cheek, and that's what it is. No, the idea is not to be the victim, not let yourself be abused from this person, not revert back to an aggressive response to them, but take the pathway that is going to put them in the negative light and then keep you from being harmed. And so it just takes a little bit of wisdom, and every situation is going to be a little bit different.
I think that also comes with aging, growing, maturing. I think being put in different life situations preps you for that. You know what I mean? Like it when you're younger and you're more naive and you don't have as much experience in the world, you're kind of working through that. But then as you grow older, you understand, hey, there's some boundaries that I can place, not just for myself, but on the world, and say, no, this is my threshold. You don't cross this threshold. So I think that just comes with aging and maturing.
Yeah. And I think the sooner we can learn those things, the better. And I think from a standpoint of parenting, if we want our children to age well, we have to parent them a little bit better as well.
Right.
So other things that we can do, challenge ourselves. Again, the baby steps come into place here. It doesn't have to be huge challenges. You don't start by, I'm going to climb Mount Everest. Well, you got to climb that small hill first and then a bigger hill. And, just that idea of Kaizen we've talked about repeatedly, about the Japanese concept of constant improvement that was formulated for business purposes, but it has tremendous opportunity to be applied in aging well. Just challenge yourself on a regular basis, make yourself grow, push that progressive overload. What about other areas? How about health? How do we age well health-wise?
I think we've talked about the exercise, the nutrition, the sleep. We talked about you said success circles. I would just say, any social environment, mental health, emotional health, that all kind of goes hand in glove with that. And I think it's just, managing stress, both physical stress and emotional stress. And like you said, stress doesn't have to be negative. We can actually harness some stress and turn it into a positive, right? If you're completely stressed out and you're like, oh my gosh, and it's making you sick, that's negative stress. But if there's something where you have a little pressure and you work well under pressure and it lights that fire under your butt to get that drive, get that competitive spirit going, that could be a positive stress, right?
Well, and if the stress is causing you harm, then you have to tend to it. And that's where regular doctor visits are important, where therapy might be warranted in certain situations. There's nothing wrong with going to a therapist if there's a need.
Right.
Whether it's in relationships, whether it's for your mental health, whether it is for like going to an executive coach for business. If you're having difficulties at work or you're not succeeding the way you want to in your work, get a coach, get a mentor. These are things that we can do proactively to age well. So what else? How about our entertainment?
Yeah. So I'm really glad you're bringing this up. So entertainment wise, I didn't really realize the effects on what we are viewing has an effect, and it can completely change our mind, our mentality. It can change so much. And you're like, that can't be a thing, but it is. And that entertainment, whether you're listening to music, if you're listening to just music that's talking about a bunch of negative things, like that kind of affects your mindset. But if you're listening to upbeat, more positive music, what changes your attitude altogether? If you're watching, not just like, if you're watching, let's just say R-rated movies, and you're exposed to a lot of things that you really wouldn't see in the real world, right? Well, you kind of become desensitized to it. It's so weird what we see with our eyes, what we hear with our ears, and even it affects what we say. It affects how we think. It affects our actions toward things. You gotta trim the fat, I guess. You gotta cut the crap out. You gotta tend to the garden. Get rid of the stuff that's not giving you fruitful growth. Like trim the vine, right? What's that old saying?
Yeah, I mean, if to use that garden analogy, if you're pruning the fruit tree,
There we go, pruning.
You are allowing for it to produce better fruit. And so our entertainment, I mean, I think we can go overboard with avoiding what might be perceived as more negative, senseless entertainment. I love some of the most senseless comedy around. I find some enjoyment from that. I don't waste my entire day watching that. But, I mean, come on, I grew up in the 80s with, when Saturday Night Live was good and we had all the movies with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, I mean, Blues Brothers and Animal House and, all those different movies that are really mindless movies that serve no benefit other than to entertain. I think it's okay. It's like if I'm going to consume the cake, I'm going to do it in a small amount and do it well. I'm not going to watch a really dumb Jim Carrey movie. I'm not a big fan of Jim Carrey movies. I think he's a great comedian, but he takes it way too far in the movies, and I just don't find him all that funny in the movies. But that's my opinion. If it works for you and you're just consuming it in small quantities, it helps you relax, that's fine. But again, small doses, and then think opportunity cost. What is this taking me away from? Is it keeping me from exercising? Is it keeping me from getting to bed early? Is it affecting my relationships? What is the positive benefit versus what is the negative to doing what I'm doing in my entertainment? I mean, nothing is inherently that bad. I mean, there are, pornography, yes. Definitely avoid things like pornography completely. And if that's something you are addicted to, get help, get treatment for that. Get out of that kind of entertainment relationship. But, if it's just some mindless, you like to watch The Simpsons or something like that. I mean, again, that's not entertainment that is necessarily the most beneficial. I mean, we could watch documentaries all the time. We could read only books of fact and nonfiction, but sometimes reading good fiction or watching a good horror movie can be somewhat relaxing and entertaining for us. But how are we dosing that? So again, always goes back to opportunity cost. I know as my students, they think I say it way too much. And maybe our podcast listeners are saying, oh my God, he's bringing up opportunity costs again. But that should be a theme. If you look at what are the opportunities I have in this moment, what am I going to do with it? And we always have choices. At every moment, we have a choice. The words I'm using right now, I am choosing the words. I could choose other words, and it might take this whole podcast at a different path.
Right.
But I face an action. It might be either action or inaction, but I've made a choice there. If I interact with somebody, I have a choice of getting upset with them, feeling victimized by them, or just walking away from them. There's always that choice, and how we choose is going to affect how we are taking responsibility for our aging.
Baby steps.
Yeah, it's always baby steps. Again,
Baby steps.
Small decisions made in the moment are going to lead to the next decision. And where we are right now is not where we have to be a moment from now, or 2 moments from now, or a year from now. We make the decisions. Where we are coming from has formulated who we are now, and take responsibility for that. A lot of people will blame others for where they are right now. And very well, others could have gotten you there. You could come from abusive past. You may have been harmed by people. But what are you going to do about that to allow yourself to grow from it and to age well?
So let's kind of end on this, but I have one question. Part of the process of stepping in that right direction, taking those baby steps, is you have to know what you want, right? You can't just start walking and have no idea what direction you're going in. You have to be walking towards a direction, whether it's I'm going to be giving myself a better financial future. I'm going to be putting myself through exercises. I'm going to start by going to the gym. I'm going to start by making just little tiny tweaks to my diet, and then eventually eating way more healthier. I'm going to start by, giving myself some positive things to lower my stress levels. I'm going to start by setting a bedtime. You have to have some way to go. You can't just start without knowing where you want. Are you kind of a believer in, not necessarily, we talked about being placed in situations and learning from it, right? So you're learning from looking back, hindsight. But do you also have foresight, where you're like, I predict that in a year from now, I will be at this level. Now you're giving yourself that time frame. You're picturing yourself getting in that time frame, and you're walking in that direction. If we learn from hindsight, can we grow from foresight?
You're really asking that question?
Yeah.
That's like kind of a no-brainer. If you learn from the past, foresight is just, again, knowing the direction you're looking at.
Right.
Foresight alone is not what we're after. We're after a goal, and so what you're really talking about is having a vision for your life in place. What are you wanting to achieve? And so if we're looking at aging well, what does aging well mean to me? And how am I going to get there? What steps do I need to take there to get there? And it all begins with one step. And, in many cases, we might be refining that vision of what is to age well as we're taking those steps. We know we have to exercise, we have to eat right, we have to get to bed early, and those types of things. Those aren't necessarily telling us where we need to go or where we plan to go. It just means we're moving in the right direction. But if you only focus in on this is a direction I need to go, you're never going to know when you're at the destination. So we have to have goals. We have to set those goals, but we have to, as we learned from Coit Cooper, set goals that are unrealistic by normal perceptions, that people are going to think that we're just out of our mind thinking that we can do these things, and so what our vision of aging needs to be more than what we have been taught about aging. For most of us, if we just think that we can live to a certain age, we've aged well. And that's not what we want. right? And so you can say, okay, well, if I get more sleep, if I exercise and I eat properly and I get to bed and do all those things, I'm going to live to be 80.
Well, what I'm saying is it's not just about thinking or, saying it. It's about thinking it too. You're visualizing that you're doing those things.
Thinking and saying, I can sit here and think and say anything I want.
Right.
But it's not changing anything. You got to do.
Exactly.
And so.
But in order to change that mindset, do you think it would be a helpful tool to just kind of visualize it and just boom, make it happen?
Well, I don't think you just visualize and boom and make it happen. I think
you totally can.
No, you can't. You have to act. Visualization is great. You need to visualize. You have to have a goal in place. And this is where journaling comes into play, planning your day, but also kind of looking at where am I going to? And so what are the baby steps to get there? If I want to run a marathon, if I've established that's what I want to do, I can't just sit there and visualize myself running a marathon and even just kind of go from, okay, now I visualized it, I can do it, I'm going to go out and just start running. You still have to have a plan.
Right.
You still have to be focused in on what's the first steps I have to make. And I can't run a marathon until I can, run 100 feet and then 200 feet and 300 feet. And you have to have a progression in place and a progression in mind. I could sit there and visualize. I would like to hit 450 on my deadlift by my 60th birthday. That's not too far off. In fact, this might be aired about that time. I got a little ways to go, but what do I have to do to get there? I can't just sit there and visualize, sit on the bench in the garage and, okay, yeah, I can visualize myself lifting that weight. I can lift that weight and never lift a weight. It's not getting me anywhere.
Visualize it is step one. Doing it is step two. I guess maybe I wasn't clear with my.
Well, yeah, I think you're kind of clear, but it was muddied a bit. So, I see some of what you're saying, but it's that process. And I think it's important for people to realize that it's not about just sitting there. I think I can. It's I am. You're doing what you need to be doing. And those baby steps are actually taking the step and moving in that direction. But as we move in that direction, we have to know where we're going to. And that's going to be a series of goals down that pathway. And we're going to get diverted from those paths. But if we know where we are going, then we know, okay, well, what's the next baby step I have to make? If I got detoured, what do I have to do?
So I think I can do this. I know I can do this. I am doing this, kind of, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Cool.
And, and maybe it's, you don't necessarily have to, think that you can, but, just immediately jumped, I think I will. Sometimes I think people, they limit their goals because of what they think they can or cannot do. And if you can't do something right now, what do you have to do in the moment to move you closer to being able to do that?
Right.
Because as we've talked about, can't, never, done, nothing. Right. And so if you're saying that you will, you're saying you will, and that's great to say, but how are you going to accomplish that? You have to have a plan.
Practice. Train.
Again, practice, but you have to know what you're doing. So there's a lot more steps than just simply sitting and visualizing and saying, I will do this. It's like, I got to know how, I got to know what I got to do, when I got to do it, and what process is in place in order for me to be able to accomplish this. And then you got to get off your ass and just do it. And so that's where kind of taking responsibility for your aging is. You have to know really, first off, what is successful aging? And hopefully we're step by step educating people in kind of what successful aging should look like. It's not just simply getting older. It is, how are we getting older? What are we going to look like? So what do you visualize yourself at a certain age? And what are you doing to get there?
Right. Don't age by default, age with success. So in summary, what's the take-home message on this? Is it do the baby steps? Stop making excuses? In order to be successful, you have to do the suck? Or is it something else?
I think that's part of it. I think to begin with, we have to know first what our definition is of aging well, and determine what do we want to accomplish as we proceed in our aging process. What do we want to accomplish as we are aging? Where do we want to go in the end? And then determine what do we have to do to get there, and take responsibility for it. So don't blame others for our lack of progress. Take responsibility and move in that forward direction.
Change the mindset. Don't point fingers. Point it on yourself. Take ownership.
Yeah,
right?
and be willing to fail. Fail forward as you age successfully.
Fail forward. I like it. Okay. Well, fail forward and always remember to
age well.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well. If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers.